What's up and welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. For today's video we have the high ELO tier list just for you. In this list we won't see Caitlyn and Jace until the 9th of November, and since the Ryzen Cup is taking place soon TM, Riot stated specifically that they won't push for too many changes unless it's emergency hotfixes. With all that out of the way, are you ready? Because then let's start. On the first position we have Graves in the S tier. Graves usually doesn't struggle in the Baron lane, and even after the nerfs it's not going to be the end of the world for him. Because of worst case scenario, he can always push the wave and look for rotational plays on the map. However, getting his base sets removed is something that always hurts any type of champion. We've seen it with Fiora and we've seen it on other champions, and it's just a matter of time until they do enough until the champion gets significantly worse. Luckily for now it's not the case already, so you can play Graves for some more time. Another thing about Graves is that crit works wonders on this champion, so never get actually baited into buying lethality. It scales really awful and deals minimal damage in direct comparison. The reason for that is Graves' unique passive. Each point of AD increases his damage more than on other champions, thanks to the unique shotgun. The same goes for also crits, and if this champion crits, you best believe in the late game stages he'll two-shot you, so stay aware of that. But why exactly is Graves such a good champion in the Baron lane and not in the jungle? In the jungle, his jungle play isn't the best. Ranged champions in jungle usually fall behind simply due to the fact that melee champions have the advantage over those, thanks to the cleaving attacks. However, in the Baron lane, Graves usually bullies the bullies of the Baron lane. Fiora has no chance against this champion, and even the worst kind of matchup, at least in theory, can be played by this champion. Because what can he do in the worst case scenario? He can kite away and push the wave whatsoever. Even if the enemy tries to cross-map play him, he can use his first ability and ultimate at the same time to destroy any type of wave. And if there's something that is specifically toxic about this champion, it's the fact that he has a smokescreen. It is just disgusting. And from one annoying champion we go to another annoying champion. Cannon. Cannon has been received some buffs recently, not in a recent patch but before, and now his AD is up by up to 6. Taking this into consideration, he can be actually quite annoying in the Baron lane. However, you never want to playing into tanky targets. He just doesn't like it. However, he loves rolling over squishy team compositions, because in those he just one-shots them. Another thing is that he is very hard or nearly impossible to lock down in the lane, simply due to the fact of his low cooldown on his movement speed steroid, which conveniently also functions as an attack speed steroid, which means more auto attacks on a target you can't hit. And to make the best out of lane, you should start with a Longsword, Brutal and Conqueror. This way your adaptive stats are turned into AD and you can beat up anyone in the laning phase during the early stages of the game and start snowballing. So please don't make the mistake of rushing an M-Tomb as your starter item. You'll really hurt your laning phase in unbelievable ways. But before we move on to our question of the day, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel to never miss any video again. And for the question of the day itself, what are your thoughts on the current kill experience? Let me know in the comments below. And from here we move on to our next role, the jungle role. And for this we have Olaf in the A tier. With Olaf returning to the stage as a valid and solid pick for not only the jungle but also the Baron lane, we have a fearsome foe that ignores any kind of CC that is thrown his way. Especially in the meta where Varus has such high priority, this is something that cannot be ignored. However, you should realize, or you should know rather, that Varus is currently permabanned for any competition in the European area. And by permabanned, I don't mean permabanned by people or players, but by Riot or the tournament organizers themselves, because the champion has a bug that makes him unplayable. Also, another feature about Olaf is the fact that he excels at farming the jungle. And this is due to the fact of his third ability's interaction. Using it deals true damage to anything, or rather all targets in range without any reduction. So you should know, normally melee attacks only deal half the damage to anything besides the main target that is struck. But it's a unique interaction which allows him to deal full damage of its ability to everything in its range. Talking about the jungle clear, it's quite insane and allows him to clear it relatively fast and super healthy on top. And since we're talking about the rise of Olaf, we have to speak about another character that is pretty good against this champion. Jarvan. Taking this into account and the other immobile characters that are in the game, Jarvan is getting more and more priority, not only because of his cage but also because of something else. He can be played in the Baron lane as a support and as a jungler, which makes him very flexible in terms of drafting. And if you look into the Olaf Jarvan isolation matchup, as the game goes on, you can force the Olaf to take Flash over Ghost, and if he doesn't do so, he'll be locked in a cage and food for your AD carry or other teammates. And with the jungle out of the way, thank God, we now move on to the mid lane. And for the mid lane we have Akshan in the S tier. Akshan is a bully that is looking for an enemy that can take him on. He is insanely strong during the laning phase and he has the tools to crush every lane if he is the better player. To do so, all he has to do is throw his first ability, tag the enemy twice on its way in and out, and then swing after it, proc his passive and just beat the enemy up. Has Barry as a summoner spell and does a double shot every time he attacks. So how is this even balanced? And even better, he revives teammates. That's quite insane. But if you want to play him properly, you'll have to invest some time. But in the end it will be really worth it, especially if you're aiming to hit higher elos playing the middle lane. He's just too good of a champion and can abuse the solo queue environment and even a competitive environment very well and is very underrated. However, if you want to approach the game in a casual sense, stay away from this champion, it's going to be too hard. And the same goes for the next champion, also in the S tier. Aurelia. Aurelia is one of the most mechanically hardest and most challenging champions in the game. Normally using autocast is something that is supposed to help you, but using autocast is the most dangerous thing you can do on Aurelia. You might lose every fight doing so, just because of the way it works. As a consequence, you need to get used to manual casting everything, which is really not easy and takes a lot of practice and a lot of mechanical prowess. But a well-played Aurelia can really take over teamfights with her skill set. And if you're really honest here, when you're playing Aurelia, you're not really forced to hit all your spells. It's often more than enough to somehow get your passive stacked and auto-attack the enemies to death. This always looks beautiful because there's nothing they can do. And all you had to do was farm your first ability on some minions and then just dash on the enemy and just slap them to death. And since in most of your games you'll have a Blade of the Rune King and a Wit's End, there's nothing they can do. You'll have so much damage they'll just die. But however, in teamfights you need to be more patient and wait for the enemy's CC spell to be used, and then you can go in and clean up the fight. And now let's move on to another role which cleans up most fights anyway, the AD carry role. And in the OP tier we have Kai'Sa as per usual. This champion is just too cracked at all points of the game. And even though she has been nerfed slightly, she'll still remain a top tier pick in solo queue. This is simply due to the fact that her kit just offers too much of everything any AD carry wishes for. It's too much damage, it's a tool to relocate yourself, it's going stealth and so on. And as you can see, it's quite a lot and quite a little bit broken. And if you really want to show with your mechanical skills, did you know that you can buffer your second ability and flash into removing the enemy's counterplay? And combining that with your first ability can really turn the tides in clutch moments. But if there's anything that's hard to play about Kai'Sa, it's leaving your own field of vision. Normally on mobile, you get easily stuck on your own screen. You get complacent and just view the fight from your own perspective and lock your camera. However, to play Kai'Sa the most proficiently, you have to look at the fight from a wider perspective. You have to move your camera and always be ready to pounce when you see an opportunity. Because if you don't, you'll lose so many games for no reason, and that would be absolutely awful for yourself. Obviously, you'll int a few times because you misjudged the situation, but that's part of the learning process, so don't worry about it too much. And next we have Veigar in the S tier. So you might be confused why Veigar is listed in the AD carry position, but he can be played in that position with a normal support or a Senna. He scales pretty well and is similar to any other mage you can play in the Dragon lane. However, there's one specific thing he provides that none other champion can provide. He can zone anything from his tower, but all you have to make sure for that is ban Olaf. Please don't deal with Olaf, and if Varus was to be open, ban this champion as well. You cannot deal with those champions. They are too annoying for you. In lane, he can just relax and scale up and deny the enemy's play potential by using his cage for free. As we go into the middle stages of the game, or rather team fights, he can completely zone off any path in the game and defend choke points towards towers pretty reliably. With that in mind, he'll force enemy summoner spells with every cage there is, and all he needs to do so is some ability haste. And fortunately for you, he can get rather tanky with the right build. And now let's move on to another champion that can really be a zoning demon. We have Nami in the S tier. Honestly speaking, you could rather put her in DOP tier, but she's not as strong as the other people in there, so let's just go with her in the S tier. But what makes Nami so strong? So even though she has been hit with a recent nerf, she's still going to be the top enchanter when it comes to crushing lane. There's just no enchanter that can compete with her in raw strength. She just brings too much in terms of laning to the table that she can snowball every lane and then influence teamfights later on with a wave. And after you hit the wave, you'll hit your bubble, and if you're running Redemption, you can cast a Redemption on the same spot and well, you'll deal a lot of damage. So a well-played Nami can carry an entire teamfight as a support. And by the way, did you know that Nami's ultimate ability grants all allies hit double the value of a passive ability? So even if you think of it as a gap closer, it's surely helpful in getting the job done for your teammates. And the next champion on this list is Galio in the S tier as well. Galio is one of those champions you can reliably blind pick into any situation if you really want to. He will always provide certain value and can always make something work. However, dealing with a Vayne is kind of a problem because she really blows him up. But the real value of a Galio is the dive protection. Having this champion in your lane makes it really hard to get dove, and even more, he has the opportunity to quickly ult towards the middle lane when your mid laner is about to hit a 0-10 Yasuo power spike. Taking his semi-global ability into mind, it gets harder and harder for the enemy to pilot around the map because they always have to consider the possibility of Galio joining the fight. However, if they don't, they might fall into a trap and then surely lose the game afterwards. And that wraps up our daily video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and sub to the channel to never miss any one of those ever again. And with all this said, catch you tomorrow.